Welcome back to Insights at DDLynn Designs, a unique twist in the ancient art of wire. This is DDLynn, and I thought I would share with you how to make a Christmas tree ornament. Now you can shrink it down and make earrings as well. Down on the bottom here where you just see that cute little scroll work, I'm not going to be keeping that. I was just trying to draw, and I can't draw worth a crap. So as you can see where I'm thickening my lines and trying to create and make everything, semi-symmetrical. But it is a Christmas tree, and it is organic, so whatever you want to add to it. So the first thing you're going to do is cut yourself 16 inches of round wire. This is 18 gauge. And you want it strong enough so you can use 20 as well. So you want it strong enough to hold up, but it is going to be hanging from the Christmas tree. It is an ornament, so you can make it bigger or smaller. If you're interested in this schematic, just direct message me on my Facebook page, which is facebook.com, DDLynn Designs. You can also find my Facebook link down below in my description. So, and then I'll post it on my website at DDLynnDesigns.com, and you can download it there for $2. So anyways, let's get started. So you can use this, like I said, as a basic schematic. You can make it smaller or bigger. You probably see the outline of the big Christmas tree in the back. So that's just an example. I made a really big one for my window. So you're going to mark the center of your wire, as I mentioned. Now, if you want a bead on the top of your Christmas tree, here's a more kind of free design, whatever you want to call it. It's just really different, something I was playing around with. So if you want a bead on top or a bead in the middle or a bead where your hole is going to be to hang your hook from your tree, you need to compensate for that. So I'm looking at this beautiful little golden crystal bead that I have here, and I think I want it sitting at the top. So I'm going to be making my loop bigger than my bead. And how you want to determine how big you want your loop at the top of your tree, because I want mine to sit up there, and I also want to have enough room to put my hook through. You need to measure your bead. So according to this caliper, this is a 5mm bead. And if I turn it on its side, because it's not perfectly round, it shrinks down to 4. So I'm going to make, likely, I want it bigger than the bead, and I want space for my, excuse my arm there, for my hook to go through on the top. I just want my bead to sit on the top. So I'm going to just kind of play with this caliper here over the barrels of my 6-step bell making plier. And I can see that this is smaller than that. So I'm going to start with that size, which is my number 4 for this 5mm, depending on how you turn it, 4mm crystal faceted bead. So I'm just going to come into the middle on my number 4. And these wires are really long. So let me figure out how I'm going to hold this. And I'm just going to I'm going to push my wires around in a U shape. Then I'm going to stop, and I want to see how my bead is going to fit in there. And that's pretty good. I think that will be fine. But I need to come down a little bit when I squeeze the legs together, because I want to make sure that I have enough room for my bead to sit there and have a little hook sitting on the top. So I'm going to come down about 1/2 inch. So I'm going to put my pliers back in here. And I'm going to squeeze my legs together down here. So I'm squeezing down lower than, unless you don't want a bead up there, you can always put your bead right here in the middle between the cross. So let me see, I might change my mind. I want to see how that's going to look at the top of my tree. I think that's going to look great. So let me just squeeze these in just a little bit closer. Now you could leave, these are just things that I've been playing with. You could leave the cross over here and just start making your Christmas tree from there. So you have to, again, determine, and let's see, I'm not in camera there. Sorry, you guys. The space that you're going to need. So if I was going to do that and leave this crossed over, which I think I'm going to do, I need this hole up here to be bigger because I have to spread these legs out. So I'm going to come in with that and I'm going to open them up a little bit. Then I'm going to get my bigger barrel and I'm going to stretch that hole out, just giving you guys ways to figure out how you're going to get everything to fit. So I'm just going to stretch that hole out there. So I'm making it bigger than I initially started doing. So let's see. Because I want my bead to sit at the top of my tree, and that's perfect. That's perfect right there. So now I'm going to weave these legs together so they maintain their distance and shape. And I'm going to pull this in just a little bit more. Oh, you guys, I'm so sorry I'm out of frame. Let me show you this again. So here's my bead at the top of my tree. I want my legs to be spread out a little bit more. Now you can see why I made that loop bigger, because I'm going to be bringing them down. So now, do I want to use half round or do I want to use weaving wire? I think half round would be really pretty and weaving wire. So I'm going to use weaving wire. And by the way, I am using tarnish resistant wire. I just started making tutorials for Christmas, and I uploaded this yesterday, I believe. And this is on making wrapped Christmas beads in all different designs. And they can be an earring, a necklace, a full necklace chain, a bracelet, a drop pendant, whatever you want it to be. But I posted on how to wrap your beads like this with these really pretty red crystal beads for the holiday. For the Christmas holiday. So I am using tarnish resistant wire. I never use tarnish resistant wire. This is just my personal preference, okay, you guys? I'm not telling you not to do it. I'm gonna cut myself a healthy length of wire here. Let me tell you how much I cut. Cut about, 8-10 inches. The reason why I don't use tarnish resistant wire when I sell, I'm in a gallery here in Sedona, and I also do craft fairs and art shows, is because if you dent this wire or scratch it, you take off that coating, and once that coating is off, there is no repair. So you also can't oxidize it. So just to give you a little heads up there, why I do not sell anything that's tarnish resistant. And if you do, you need to let your client know. Because I think that's really important, especially if you're going to be throwing their jewelry in a drawer. So I'm going to make 3 full rotations, and then I'm just going to do a little figure 8. Just want to tie these legs together. And again, I'm using a tarnish resistant titanium colored weaving wire. And this is 28 gauge. So I'm just going to do this a couple of times. Now you could weave as much as you like. Whoops, just saw I caught my tail in there. So I need to get that little guy out of there. You could keep weaving your figure 8 as much as you want. There are so many ways to embellish off the Christmas tree. So let me see, will that be enough? I think so. I like that, so I'm just gonna leave that. Now I'm going to cut because it's tarnish resistant and it's got that coating on it, I don't tend to snap this wire, for those of you that have been following me. I want to want this to have, let me make sure my bead's going to fit in there, a more teardrop look to it. I don't want it perfectly round on top, and that's just personal preference. Okay, so now I'm going to put, this is going to be the top of my tree, and my bead's going to sit up here, and my little hook's going to go right on top underneath it. So now I'm just going to give myself an idea, this is why I drew this schematic, of where I want to bend my legs in. So my wire obviously is coming out on the side, crossing over, and I'm looking at where my little turn is in the tree. And so I'm just going to come here and mark that. Then I'm going to come to my board, and I'm going to measure how long that is so I know where to mark the other side. So I'm going to line this up right here, and it's just a little over an inch. It's not much over an inch when I line this wire up square. See how the wire is squared? So it's just a little over an inch. So I want to do the same thing with this one. I want to line that wire up square and just a little over an inch. So that looks pretty even to me. Now I'm going to bend where the mark is. I'm going to be using my second step on my 6-step bail making pliers. And I'm going to come right above the mark. So the mark is sitting on the outside, and here's a really important tip. You want to keep your wires as parallel as possible, or you're going to have to reshape things, and that's just going to make it, you know, more work for you. So I'm looking at my loop here and how straight the wire is, and that this loop isn't curving down or curving up. And I'm simply going to bend this wire over the barrel and swing it up. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to come above that mark, make sure that my wires are parallel and straight, that my loop isn't going down or up. And I'm just going to swing. Let me make sure I'm above that mark. Just had a thought there, and I wanted to make sure. And then I'm just going to swing this wire, and I'm too low down on my barrel. I could see that I was getting caught in between it. I'm going to swing it up. So if you notice, you want your wire to be going down. You don't want a flip up on the end there. You want the wire to be going down. Or honestly, you could make it any way you want, really. So now I'm just going to mark again. And you can do this all by eye. And I just flipped my, my bead. Just to give me an idea. It's a gauge. So now I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. I'm going to measure the distance from this loop here. Let me bring this down to where I marked it, and it's just a little over 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to square up my wire, and it's just a little over 1/4 of an inch. So this time I'm going to come right on the mark, and I'm going to be using my smallest barrel. So I'm going to use my number 1. I have that mark right in between both barrels. And let me start on this side, you guys, because this wire is crossing over. So I don't want to make my life difficult. So the mark is right, kind of sort of in between, but kind of above, because you're going to have more distance from there, and I don't want that too long. So you know what? I'm changing my mind. I'm going to come below. So I'm going to come below the mark, and I'm going to swing this wire really tight against that barrel. And then I'm going to pull my wire down. I want it to always be going in a downward direction. So same thing over here. I'm coming right below the mark. Oops, wrong size. Almost did the wrong size there. My number 1 barrel. I'm going to push that wire around and down. And really straighten out that wire. So here's what we have. So now I'm going to measure as I did here. And I'm going to make my mark right here because I'm taking into consideration how this, I'm coming a little bit further down than my schematic because I'm taking it into consideration how that turn takes up wire there, the turn in the branch. So that's just how I'm doing it. Please do it any way you want. So now this is just under an inch, measuring it out. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Take this wire here, and I'm going to measure it just under an inch. So let's see. Double check. What's that old saying? Measure twice, cut once. That looks like a little bit longer. It is. So I'm going to come up. Now this time I'm going to be using my number 4 barrel. Want that branch a little bit more hefty. And I'm going to come, it's going to get a little fiddly on you because your wire's going to want to turn. I'm going to put that mark right in between my barrels. I don't even know if you can see it in there. And as before, I want to make sure that everything's parallel, that nothing's turning off. I'm going to swing this wire around and up. Same thing here. I'm going to put this in the middle of my barrel. Make sure everything's flat and parallel. And I'm going to swing this wire around and up. I'm not trying to match this, you guys. I'm just using it as a gauge. So I'm looking at here about where I want my distance to make my next bend for the bottom of the tree. So I'm going to come in about here. And that should be about, I'm eyeing it. So exactly, I'm going to do it exactly a ½ inch. So I'm going to go exactly on the ½ inch mark. And put this one in here on the ½ inch mark. Then I'm going to use my number 1 on my barrel making pliers. And I'm going to come below the mark. So we have our mark right here. I'm going to come below it so the mark sticks outside my barrel. And I'm going to swing that wire as close as I can to the barrel. And I got to make sure remember, because I'm seeing 2 marks here where my ½ inch mark is. So I'm going to come right below it. My lighting in here is just ridiculous. And I'm going to swing this wire. I'm trying to stay as close to the barrel as I possibly can while trying to show you how to do this, which is in an awkward position for me because it's not normally how I would do it if I wasn't doing a tutorial. So I got my little schematic and my Christmas tree is coming along. So now, as before, I'm looking at how far down this curve is going in the branch, and I'm going to come out right about here. So I just kind of like look at it on an angle, and I kind of angle that into the point or the top of the turn in the branch. And now I want to measure it. Let's get my little paper out of the way. So this one is sitting right above the 1 1/4 inch mark. So it's just a little bit further out than the 1 1/4 inch mark. So I'm going to measure this up. Let me double check. Yeah. Right above the 1 1/4 inch mark. Now I'm going to use the number 5 because there's 6 steps on the barrel. If you're new to wire wrapping and you've just, got these, there's 1 and they go in the opposite direction from smaller to bigger. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to use the 5th. And I'm going to put my pliers in here and I'm going to put that mark right in between my barrel. Make sure everything's flat so there's no turning in my tree. And I'm going to swing that wire with my hand to the middle. Then I'm going to do the same thing over here. My number 5, put the mark in between my barrel. And this is kind of an opposite direction for me, but I'm going to swing that to the center. There's a little, my wire got a little bent there, so I really want this to kind of tilt down. So I'm rolling the curve down a little bit. I don't want it coming perfectly straight. I want it to kind of tilt down that branch. So that's just simply rolling the wire in a little bit. See how I'm creating more of an angle on it now? Let's see, that's much better. I like that a lot better. Okay, now if you wanted to do the swirl here, you could, but there's nothing, you'd have to really have a lot more wire. This is 16 inches of wire, and you can see how we're running out. So you'd have to have a lot more wire to do the swirl here. And you'd want enough to bring the 2 swirls together. So where I made these loops here, so I went around and over, you'd want to make sure that you brought them close together because you would need to tie them off in the middle. But I'm going to make a little trunk like I did on this one. So now I'm going to center this up on my mat because I need to find center in my branches here. So I want to make sure that everything is lining up. These are both, let's see. This one looks like it needs to be cleaned up a little bit. Got some interesting little, and you got to be so careful with this wire not to squeeze into it too hard. I kind of want to clean this up a little bit and then bring it back to middle. So now I just want to find the center of my tree here. Because I'm going to mark this. So I want to make sure that my legs are the same distance. So this is sitting on the 1/4 inch mark, and this other tree branch is sitting on the 1/4 inch mark. And I'm going to mark on the inside of where it's crossing under. So I'm working on the inside of that. Try to make a big, big mark so you can see it. And then on this one, I'm gonna mark right on the inside as if I'm coming on the inside of the wire, crossing underneath. Now I'm going to make my trunk. I don't want it to be really stiff, meaning really straight and stiff. I don't want a sharp bend in that. So I'm going to use my 6-step bell making pliers, and I've got the mark right in between the barrels, and I'm just going to round this out like so. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Just kind of pushing it off on an angle. Oops, I used the wrong barrel. I just caught that. Woohoo! Want the small barrel. Okay. So now we're making our trunk to our Christmas tree. That's going to be great. And then we'll make some adjustments if we don't like the way things are looking. At this point, if this wasn't, I could probably hammer it gently on the back, but you could hammer your curves in your Christmas tree. So I'm going to tie these together with my weaving wire. And I'm going to be using a titanium. Again, it's coated. By the way, this is wire that I started with 4.5 years ago. And as I mentioned, I don't really use it for anything else. And I think I had some weaving wire left here, but I can't seem to find it because I got stuff all over the place. So I'm going to weave these together, and you can use half round wire. So that's another option. Let's do that. Let's use some half round wire. So I'm going to use some titanium half round wire. And this is a 21 gauge half round wire. And it's just a little bit more like an oxidized silver. So I'm going to cut myself 4 inches. And I'm going to tie the legs of my trunk together. So you want to make sure that they're really centered up. And I think what I'm going to do, I just started thinking about a different way I want to do this. I'm going to wrap around, so I'm just going to open up my Christmas tree. I'm going to wrap around the Christmas tree branch here first. Take advantage of that. I just kind of looked at it and thought, oh, let me do this instead. It's a very interesting wire to work with. It's a little bit more springy because of that coating. So there's what I did. So I did 4 little wraps, and I'm going to slide this down. And I'm going to push my wire through my tree. And I'm going to come around and wrap over 4 times. Just kind of liked the idea of doing that. You can do whatever you want. So I'm just tying them together. Then I'm going to cut my wire in the back. And cinch it down, always rolling off that wire. But if you're working again with coated wire, you want to be very careful not to dig into the wire itself. So I'm going to cut myself another, I'm trying to think about how far down I want to go with my branch. So I need to bring my legs together a little bit more. Now at this point, weaving instead of half round, so like on this one, I did half round down here, and it really does look like a trunk, but I think I want to weave in. I don't know, that just looked pretty to me when I was thinking about it. So let me cut myself some titanium weaving wire. All that means is the color is titanium. Just so you guys can see the color. It's kind of like a steely gray. So I'm going to cut myself about 8 inches of weaving wire, and it's probably too much, but that's okay. And I'm going to do a figure 8. So I'm going to come underneath, and I'm going to do 3 full coils. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Because I got my little wire back here coming out, so that doesn't count. Then I'm going to go underneath, and I'm just doing a figure 8 weave. 1, 2, 3 full rotations. So you're coming around on your 4th. I'm going to slide that up. I want it as parallel to the other weave as possible. It's just all about preference. I just thought it would make a cool look to the trunk of the tree. And actually, you guys, that 8 inches is really working out. So let's take a look about how long I want that trunk. And I think that might be good enough, but I'm going to finish off with this wire. The shorter your wire gets, the more difficult it is to manage. As you can see me wrapping on a distance there and angling it off. Okay, so I'm going to cut my wire in the back, and you can make your trunk as long as you want. Now you have 2 options on the base of your trunk. You can either roll your wires towards each other or roll them out. I want mine a little bit more decorative. And I'm gonna cut this wire off. Let's see if I can snap it. Coated wire typically doesn't snap as easy, but that did. Okay. And then I just wanna make sure everything's nice and flattened down. And it's kind of nice, the contrast in the weaving wire. Was this one called titanium? No, this one's hematite. Sorry, you guys. This is darker. The half round that I used up here was called titanium color. This one's called hematite. So we got that darker hematite weaving wire. Let's get rid of this guy. Okay, my front or my back? Let's see, we got to roll this guy down. Okay, so now I'm going to roll my legs in a decorative design, something, you know, pretty. So I'm going to base it off the measure of this leg here, which is exactly at 1 inch. And they do not look even to me. They aren't. This one is over 1 inch. So I'm going to even them up. Then I want to straighten them up a little bit. And I kind of want to curve them out because I'm going to curve them in that direction anyways. Okay, so now I'm going to get my 6-step bell making pliers and I'm going to make a loop. As I'm swinging the wire towards the tree. Do the same thing on this side. Swinging that wire towards the tree. Now you could leave it like this. I'm not going to. Just squeeze that in a little bit more. I'm going to start rolling it in more towards the base of the tree. Because I don't want it to really get caught on anything. You could also tie it off if you wanted. Just kind of pulling that wire in. So I'm going to go a step further. Make sure that this is flat. Now be careful if you're working with tarnish resistant wire because you could really dig in. I'm going to roll that loop into itself. Trying not to press really hard on this wire. And ding it. Because once you do that, there's no coming back from it. Can't buff it out or you'll buff the tarnish off. Isn't that cute? Our little Christmas tree. So now I'm going to make some adjustments here. I want a little bit more of a curve down here on this branch. So I'm just going to use my finger, and I probably should have done it before I closed off my loop so I had more working room. So word to the wise there. I might have to use my pliers to get that look that I want. Want more of a curve in my branch. So I'm just using my fingernail to curve that branch down a little bit. And this coated wire has too much memory for me. It really is susceptible to reacting immediately to whatever you're doing to it. I don't know if that makes any sense. Want this in more. So it looks like this one's got to go up. Just wanted some more shape. I want this to be opened up more and more curved. I'm just playing around with it. Just depends on what you want your tree to look like. Okay, let me see. I'm not liking that, so I'm going to go ahead and straighten that out a little bit. I just don't work with this wire anymore, but I wanted it to be silver for the holidays. And this side needs to be, stick my plier in there and kind of round out. There, I'm happier with that. Just personal preference. So let's take a look at the rest of our branches. I want to make sure that they're going kind of down and in. And they don't have to be, everybody. It's a Christmas tree ornament. So it's just something. Now you can really take off on this and add so much wire to it and decorate it like crazy. So if you really wanted to have like an heirloom Christmas ornament that would be passed down to generations, you could really, and I'm not even done with this one, but you could really take off and just keep adding wire and making it more dramatic and, you know, add more in the middle. It just can go on and on and on. So I'm liking that better. Just kind of rolling these down a little bit. I'm holding the top. So those little subtle tweaks that I did, for me personally, I like better. So let me find my bead, because we're going to set our bead in here. And I'm going to use a 28 gauge weaving wire. I don't want that dark weaving wire on top up there. So I'm just going to run, and I want my wire in the back instead of folding over the front. So I'm going to equal up the sides. And I'm going to come down the wire instead of up the loop. So I'm going to start weaving down. The reason why I'm doing that is I just want to make sure that I have room for my hook. Hoping I cut myself enough wire here. Now I'm going to feed this wire, if I can, through again, that bead, coming out the other side, and bring it down. And let's see if I can feed it through again. I should have plenty of space. Yeah, I do. And I'm going to bring it down the other side. So they're both coming down on the other side. And I'm going to give them a good rock. I'm going to rock that wire. Make sure it's nice and tight. Didn't get caught up in that bead anywhere inside the hole. And then I'm just going to work my way down. Going to make 3 wraps, and you can wrap all the way. So I want to give you some inspiration. You could put beads on all the branches, and I'm not going to go through it in detail, but I am going to bring in another piece of wire just to show you how to continually adding wire to this and changing it up. And we're done. Then you would make an S hook and hang it from your Christmas tree or your window or your ceiling, wherever you want to hang it. I keep crossing over. There we go. So I'm going to wrap this side and I'll be right back. So I want to show you quickly, I'm not going to go through it and start wrapping and all of that, but how to make it kind of more Art Deco-y, you know, and just keep adding more wire. So what you would do, so for this one, I cut myself 13 inches and I'm just going to make a loop. Let me see how deep that is. I'm going to use my number 4. And I'm just going to bring the wires in. So at this point, I would attach them. So I'm going to spread them out a little bit more. Bring them first closer together and then spread them out. And then I would put a bead in the middle there. So just wanted to give you some inspiration of how you can start tracing this design. So up here, I bent my little tree trunk down there. Just saw that. This is why you can't use a super thin wire, especially if you've got little ones. They're going to be dragging and playing and putting their little beautiful little angel fingers on all the ornaments on the tree. So you really, if you're going to use 20 gauge, you probably want to double up, meaning really start embellishing on your tree. So I'm looking at that there and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to tie these legs off. So I'm just spreading it out more. So I would come in, I'm not going to do the whole thing, you guys, because it would take a long time, but I just want to give you an idea. And I'm going to use the titanium again, and I'm going to use half round wire. You can weave, you can, on this one, I weave the sides together. On this one, I'm going to use half round. And I'm debating on whether or not I want to add my bead there first. And I think I do. So let me grab a bead. And do I want to stay in the same color vein? Or do I want to use a different color? Let's see. I think I'm going to stay in the same color vein. So I'm going to wrap it, just giving you some inspiration with my half round wire. Let me put this through my bead first. I was making my life difficult. And I am not on my flat side, so I need to turn my wire around. There we go. And I'm going to wrap my bead in there. I'm rolling on that half round wire to really tighten it against that bead. So this is just giving you ideas of how you're going to take off on your design. So I'm going to put my Christmas tree in the front. But actually, you guys, I need the wire in the back, but I need my legs in the front. So I'm going to do it this way, but run my wire. I want my wire coming around the back. My half round right there. It's a bit fiddly. So I'm going to tie these together. And then I'll just show you where I'm going to take off from there. And you could bring in another wire now. So you could take another piece of wire. At this point, I would do about 10 inches, not 13. And I would bend it in the middle again and keep adding. I don't want to tighten that down too much until I make sure that they're equally spaced on each side. So let's take a look at that. See, I need to center them up. That's why I didn't crank down on them really hard. Now we're getting somewhere. It's just a little fiddly when you've got all this length of wire that's loose. It's not really attached to something yet. Just a couple of weaves up here, which is why I do a little bit of each side so that I can maintain my symmetry. I kind of want to straighten that up. Got to move all these out of my way. They're driving me crazy. So let's see. Now you could, just to give you an example of more inspiration, you could just keep weaving down until you turn your wire in to follow the pattern of the Christmas tree. It's really, as you're doing this, you see things. And just decorate the dickens out of it, right? So I'll show you just one quick little thing that I'm going to do to trace the shape of the Christmas tree. shorter your wire gets, the more difficult it is to manage it. But with half round wire, it's easier to keep from twisting it if it isn't super long. Just really rocking down on that wire. And then I'm going to cut it off on the back. So let's finish up our third wrap here. And then I'm going to just cut it off. Okay, so this is going to give you more control now that you've tied it off. And then for me, just to give you some more inspiration, I'm going to be running another wire in the middle here, and then I'm going to put a bead. So I'm going to cut 10 inches, I'm going to run another wire, fold it in half, and start following the tree until I have it all the way down. So I have nothing but little golden crystal beads all the way down the middle of the tree. So what you can do at this point, if you just want a double wire, is see where your wire is resting alongside the outside of the Christmas tree branch. You want to get your pliers in there, and you want to use the smallest loop, and right above, you don't want to come flush, okay, to the end of the loop there. You want to come above it, and you want to swing your wire up. So the same thing over here. You don't want to come flush to that loop. You want to come right above it. And this is a little bit awkward for me in that direction, so I'm going to turn this around in a better working direction. Oh my goodness, I got this big old wire over here sticking me in the arm. I would do it very different if I wasn't teaching. Okay, I'm going to just push that wire around. Oops, crossing over underneath. And so that's what we're going to be doing, is we're going to be tracing the tree. Now I need to swing that wire way up. So let me get my little guy in here. And I think I used a bigger one on that end. I'm not very fond of this wire. It gets these little waves in it so much quicker than non-tarnished wire. Let me get above this. There we go. So now at this point, before you continue anything else, you can start weaving in. You could layer in little tiny crystals in between the two branches. And so what I mean is right here, if you have any little 2mm beads, you could run them all the way down the Christmas tree. So all I'm going to do at this point is I'm just going to hold right here. And you do it any way you want, and I'm going to follow the tree. Like that. So I'm going to turn in the opposite direction. Always try to get in your best working position. And we're kind of making, if you will, a 3D Christmas tree. And so that's basically what you're going to do, is you're just going to keep playing around. That needs to be a lot tighter in there. Sometimes you want to go in the opposite direction of where you really want the wire to go to get the wire to do what you want. So you could literally really start taking off. I mean, you could start adding, making swirls inside of each branch. So I just wanted to give you more inspiration on how you can change this single wire Christmas tree. So here I'm thinking about, based on the length of my wire, bringing it back around and then making a beautiful swirl down here. So I would just keep following. See, I'm following my wire, but I want to straighten that out. So I would just keep following my wire. Put my pliers in here just to give you an idea of where I'm going with all of this. Come around that bend. Then I'm just going to follow this wire here, and I'm going to come way out to the side here because I'm going to make a swirl down here. And before I did that, I would tie everything off up here first. So I would tie everything off, add more beads inside the little branches. I hope that makes all sense. And then, because you have to have it tied off so that everything is lined up. And then just in here, I would make a really pretty swirl. Make a beautiful little swirl in here. Or you could loop it and come back around the branch. The sky's the limit. So I hope you enjoyed that, everyone. Please give me your feedback. Your comments and feedback are really important to me. And if you like my page, give me a thumbs up. Takes 1 second. And don't forget to subscribe if you're new to my channel and hit that bell so you know when my new tutorials are coming out next. Thank you all for being a wonderful part of this magical ancient art of wire. I wish for all of you all that you wish for yourselves. May you have a wonderful, magical wire art day. Bye for now.